Good morning, everybody. Well, today is the first Sunday of Advent. Actually, Sunday. Right now, I'm recording this on Thanksgiving. And Advent in Latin, it's a Latin word, which means coming. And throughout church history, Advent typically referred to the second coming of Christ, the time when heaven would come to earth and all things would be made new and everything would be renewed. And so, since that time, in recent years, um, Advent refers to the first coming of Jesus, his birth, when God actually chose to come to earth as a human being and begin the restoration project through Jesus. So, this is the best of both worlds because today we end the book of Revelation, the second coming of Jesus, and we also celebrate the first Sunday of Advent, the first coming of Jesus, and this Sunday is the Sunday of hope. Now, hope is different in the Bible from what we say when we say, I hope so. When we say, I hope so, I might be saying, I hope this happens or this happens. And if it happens, I'm happy. And if it doesn't happen, I'm devastated. And it's a thing that's not solid. But the Bible calls this hope, a living hope. Peter called it a living hope. It's a rock. It's something you can rely on. It's something that's inside of you that you know is true. It's like a rock in the ocean, and the waves come over it, and the waves come over it, and it can't knock. By the time the waves are done, the worst of them, the rock is still standing. And so that's what a living hope is, one that we rely on, one that makes a difference in my life today, one that brings life change for me. It's an eager expectation that produces a change in my life, which makes my life solid. Now, in our city, we have a church called St. Sebastian, and there's scaffolding all over the front of it. That scaffolding is there so that workers can renew the facade of St. Sebastian's Church. When the scaffolding is taken down, we will have a renewed facade. It will be beautiful. And the tour guides will bring tourists and teach them about that carving and this design and the architects who did it. But when it was built, the purpose of the facade was to point to the reality behind the facade, the reality within the church. And that reality is God. That reality is the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's the rock that it all points to. And so, now in chapter 21 of Revelation, we read, there is no more temple. The facade, the building is all gone. Why? Because the reality, the truth, the living hope was held within it. The early Jews and the early Christians all knew that that was the place where heaven touched earth. It was the place where God was on earth. But then came Jesus, and we can see that Jesus replaced the temple. And now we see that God, the Almighty, and the Lamb are the temple. And now no sun, no moon, because the world is illuminated by the Lamb. God's glory is the light by which we all live. And then it says, the nations will walk by the light of God, and the kings of the earth will come. And that comes from Isaiah 60. And Kathy's favorite book is Isaiah. And in Isaiah 60, we see this great picture of the kings of the earth flocking, bringing all of their peoples to the glory of God. And there's commerce. There's bustling life. There are herds of camels, flocks of sheep, ships from Tarshish bringing gold and frankincense. The whole deal. There's a world that is kind of like our world, I guess you could say, except it's not capitalism. Capitalism is built on self-interest. It's not communism. It's forced distribution. Nothing is forced. It is a world where every person in it sacrifices and gives and lives for the other person. It's where you and I will voluntarily live for God and love living for God. And there won't be any pride, won't be any humility even. There just will be people not even thinking about ourselves. We'll always be thinking about the others. Why? Because it's full of people with changed hearts. And then we learn that the walls or gate, there are no, the gates will never be closed. Anybody who wants to enter can enter. Anybody whose heart has been changed to the point where that person lives not for himself but for others, lives not for himself but for God, chooses to be obedient because you can see that obedience is the greatest feeling, the greatest freedom. It's the perfect freedom of perfected obedience that we'll be living in. And those who choose that are welcome. Those who can't relinquish themselves won't like it. And they will bounce up against a world that is so glorious, but they don't want it because they want themselves as captain of their own fate. And so that's the splitting point between those who are in and those who are not. God rejects no one, but there are many who choose not to enter. Well, and then there's a river coming down in chapter 22. And this river is just like Ezekiel 47. And in that, out of the temple is the reality, the living hope. And it's imagined as a living river. These are images now. A river, and it begins to rise, and it rises to the ankles, and then to the knees, and then to the waist. And then it's so high that all of those who are in this great new world can swim in it. Don't worry if you can't swim. It will not drown you. It's the kind of thing where your life is irrigated with the life of God, and you relish in it. And for me, I love the picture in the last battle, the last book of the Chronicles of Narnia, where they swim up waterfalls. And I want to do that. And then along this river are the trees of life along both sides of the river, a new fruit each month. And the leaves are for healing. In recent years, I've learned to just love fresh, crisp, juicy apples that have a tang to them. And when I bite into it, it just fills my whole being with this burst of life. And it's that kind of food. I won't be happy. I won't have to settle for McDonald's anymore. I'll settle for health food and love it. And you will too. And then we see a picture in this bustling world of life and joy of human beings reigning on this new earth. R-E-I-G-N, reign, ruling. This does not mean, however, sitting on a throne and telling others what to do. So, I was in the marketplace the other day, and standing and just watching all of these people bustling, uh, going through the market. And then I saw all these people walking down the street. And I thought to myself, wow, here are all these people walking down the street. And most of them have jobs, you know, and they have lives and responsibilities. And a lot of them are walking down the street looking at their cell phones. Not very many of them are smiling, if any at all. And then I realized these people are reigning over the earth right now. Anytime you go to a job, anytime you perform some function that ultimately helps society run, you are reigning. You are part of the rulership of planet Earth. But one day, we will reign not by having to go to jobs, but by delighting in going to work and purpose that we were meant for. We will delight looking at others. We won't be hiding from them. We'll look at them with smiles because our greatest joy will be helping them find their greatest joy. And we will be happy because it won't be cloudy. The glory of God will be permeating us and the atmosphere and our relationships. And that's what it means to be reigning. Now, we see next in chapter 22, verse 7, Jesus says, I am coming quickly. Well, in the first century, they all believed that. They knew Jesus was coming again. But then a year would go by, another year, then a decade, then many decades, and people would be suffering, and they would begin to ask, where is Jesus? During this time, this was written, Revelation, people were being thrown to the lions, people were being crucified by the hundreds and put on crosses along the Roman roads. It was horrible, and people would say, when's he coming? And Peter answers that. He says, remember, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. Hang on, because he's coming. Your life, even though it seems suffering for so long, it's short. I can see my life. All the years I've lived, I look back, it's gone like that. Peter also says in Acts, repent, therefore, because then times of refreshing will come, and then Jesus will come down from heaven, and he will permeate the earth. So part of when Jesus comes has to do with our repenting Christians repenting. And then the early church also believed that Jesus was coming. There were so many interventions, so many miracles. There were comforting. There was comforting of God when there should be no comfort. And he came into prayers and worship. So all of that put together tells us that yes, indeed, Jesus keeps coming, and one day he will have come in his fullness. But meanwhile, hang in there. And by the way, this encouragement is what brought the early Christians through those first 300 years of massive expansion of Christianity, because they knew they had a living hope of one who was to come, had promised he would come, and they've seen those effects of that rock in their current lives. Now, grand finale. And I cannot express to you how magnificent this is, nor can anyone else, because it's beyond our imagining. Even though we need our imaginations to be able to begin to taste the goodness and greatness of this reality, that there is going to be a new heaven, a new earth, a new creation in which we will live and flourish forever and ever. Well, here's what Jesus says. The Spirit and the bride say, come. Let the one who hears say, come. And let the one who is thirsty come. I know that about you, and I know that about every person on planet Earth. You're thirsty. I'm thirsty. That German word Sehnsucht, longing for that thing that you know must exist, but it's not here yet. We've got that. We've got hurts and pains, and we long to be free from it. We're thirsty. This is where history comes in. This living hope is based on history. And the history is this, that Jesus, when he went to the cross, he didn't go in triumphantly. Oh, look, I'm going to overcome evil and sin and pain. He went in full of pain, full of remorse, crying out, God, why have you forsaken me? And then he says, I thirst. I thirst. And on the cross, he took all that thirst, all that unfulfilled hunger and desire and want and wishing that you live through. And he took it onto the cross. And he went there, and the worst that could happen happened. The thirst for final salvation and everything to be made new and renewed and healed died. It was over. It was dead. The worst that could happen happened. But then Sunday came. Sunday came. And up from the grave he arose. And life came about. He was the first fruits. He was the first example of what is going to happen to you. And he ate and he drank and he fellowshiped. He had a new body in a new life. And that is your future and mine. And that's the history. That's the fact. That's the rock. Now, if you grasp this, you'll be able to face anything. Because that's a living hope. Not I hope so, but that's something that you can base your life on right now. The early church, as I said, had this living hope, and that caused it to not just survive, to flourish. The things I've read about slavery in America, that they had a living hope. How would you survive the horrors of slavery if all you knew is that you were going to be a slave forever? They had a living hope. And that caused them even to flourish in many ways, the great spirituals that they have left us. And then I think of myself. I actually, as I was thinking about this message, saw myself on the cross. Not because I went to the cross with any courage for anyone else. No, I saw myself in Jesus on the cross. And his taking all my thirst, all my desire to be free from all guilt, all regrets, all the things that I've wrecked and messed up, all my sin, to be free from it, to be finally set free, free at last, free at last, free at last. It's there on the cross. And then he forgave all my sin, and then died, took it to the depths of hell, and came alive. And with his life, I came alive too. And as I am able to see that, I can not only see my future, that gives me a freedom now. That gives me a joy now that I would not have without that. And so, Kathy and I, a few years ago, took our great vacation for 3 weeks and went to places we had always wanted to go to. And one of them was in Haarlem, the Netherlands, which is where Corrie ten Boom grew up. A great woman of faith. Read anything by her, look up her speeches. Her faith is a model, and she was one of Kathy's heroes. So we went to the Corrie Ten Boom house. And there, Kathy took a picture of me standing beside the words which were her living hope, her rock. And it said, the best is yet to come. And that carried her through the most horrific challenges of Nazi concentration camps and more. And it gave her life in the present. Now, here's what I want you to do. This is Thursday, so you still have time to hop on a plane and come here to Salzburg and be here at 11 o'clock Sunday morning at our church, Salzburg International Christian Church. And you are going to get to hear the sermon again and worship with us. And after the sermon, you will hear an incredible rendition of the great song, Holy City, which pictures the New Jerusalem, the Holy City, the perfected, brand new life of God, coming down from heaven onto earth. We don't go to heaven and stay there. We go to heaven and end up back here on this earth, alive, with new bodies and new spirits and new hearts, alive forever and ever. And when she sings this song, you will be mesmerized and you will be lifted in the present to what's coming in the future. Now, if you can't be here, Google Holy City, go to Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and there's a man who will sing it with the choir in the background. It won't be as good as what you'll hear in our church, but do it. And allow yourself to feel in the present that living hope that is on its way already, but not yet. God bless you, everybody. What a great book this book of Revelation has been. I hope it has buoyed you as it has buoyed me. God bless. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.